All right, let's dive in. Imagine the classic story of a deal with the devil. Now, what if that deal wasn't made in some dusty old study, but in the fiery boardroom of hell itself? That is the absolutely fascinating twist at the heart of this story, where the wager for a single human soul is hammered out between the original architects of damnation. And this one line, this chilling quote from the demon Mammon, it really sets the entire stage. This isn't about brute force. It introduces a whole new kind of corruption, one that relies on the quiet, creeping, and oh so seductive power of the marketplace. So, our story kicks off deep in the abyss, where the real heavy hitters of hell are holding a council. I mean, these aren't just your run of the mill demons, these are the ancient forces, the OGs of sin who've been tempting humanity since the very beginning. First up, you've got Lucifer, the Prince of Pride, watching humanity from his throne of pure obsidian. And to him, humans are just pathetic little small gods. Our entire existence is just fumbling around in the dirt. And for him, it's a source of endless, cynical entertainment. Then you have Beelzebub, who is literally a being made of decay. He looks at human life and just sees this pointless, short little cycle. You know, you desire things, you make mistakes, and then you inevitably fall right into his nets of envy and gluttony. Game over. And rounding out the old guard is Samyaza. Now, as a fallen angel, he's haunted by his own past, and he sees humanity's biggest weakness in our own internal conflict, this constant war between our angelic souls and our animal appetites. For him, we are always teetering on the edge of a fall. But into this council of classic primal sins, a totally different kind of power steps forward. This one isn't covered in the filth of the pit or shrouded in shadows. No, he is draped in the shimmering, deceptive gold of the marketplace. And this new player is Mammon. See, he isn't just a demon who likes treasure. He is the very idea that you are what you own. He's that little voice whispering for more, that corrosive belief that you never, ever have enough. This chart just lays out the difference perfectly. Mammon basically argues that the old ways, pride, lust, all that stuff, they're like heavy, clumsy chains. His method? It's a finer thread. It's the subtle poison of commerce. Why bother breaking a will when you can just buy it, fair and square? Now, what's so terrifyingly effective about Mammon's tactics is that they work by hiding in plain sight. He just rebrands our vices as virtues. Greed? No, that's diligence. Hoarding wealth? That's just being successful. He manages to infect whole societies, turning the stock market into a cathedral where profit is the only prayer that matters. Okay, so let's get to the wager itself. Because Mammon doesn't go after some easy target. Oh no. He aims for the absolute best, the one soul that could prove his philosophy is superior to all the others. And his chosen target is a man named Vesperus. Now, the Lord himself sees Vesperus as a shining example of human potential, a man of deep faith and sacred vows. But where heaven sees a potential saint, Mammon sees the perfect test case, an inverted Nazarene just waiting to be created. So Mammon makes his wager. He bets that he can convince this paragon of virtue that his real worth isn't in spiritual goals, but in how much stuff he has in his warehouse. He's going to prove that even the noblest soul can be bought, that its values can be replaced by a simple balance sheet. And unbelievably, the Lord allows it. He kind of dismisses Mammon as just a joker of the marketplace, the least threatening of all the demons. The divine logic is that a truly good person, even at their worst, will still know the right way to go. And just like that, the game is on. Now, to really understand this wager, we have to understand Vesperus himself, and how this man of sacred vows becomes the perfect mouthpiece for Mammon's twisted philosophy. What Vesperus does is he takes every single symbol of sacred devotion and just flips it into a sacrament of materialism. He trades a crown of thorns for a crown of gold. He rejects poverty and service, choosing wealth and ownership instead. He turns that narrow gate to salvation into a wide 8-lane highway with some very, very high tolls. So in the marketplace, Vesperus starts preaching this new twisted gospel. He's not telling people to look up to the stars anymore. He's telling them to look down, to celebrate the glitter of the gutter. He teaches them that wanting anything more than what you can buy is a sign of weakness. Of course, all this talk has to lead to action. And that brings us to the climax of this whole prologue, the moment a soul is officially put up for sale. So a moral test plays out right there in the town square. A tightrope walker, a living symbol of balance, plummets to the ground. And what does Vespers do? He just watches with cold contempt. That one act of failed compassion is all the opening Mammon needs. He appears, the contract is offered, and Vespers signs his soul away for 24 years of power. And with this one line, Vespers reveals just how completely he has embraced Mammon's logic. Human worth is no longer about character or spirit. It's measured purely in financial terms. If you have no money, you have no soul. The fall is absolute. That signature on the pact, it leads directly to this devastating consequence. A spiritual trap with a very deceptive name, the illusion of wealth. This right here is Mammon's most powerful weapon. It isn't just about having money. It's being psychologically trapped by the belief that your wealth is your worth. It's a promise of happiness that actually creates this endless gnawing hunger that can never, ever be satisfied. And people who follow this path, they don't find peace. They find a gilded cage that they built themselves. A life filled with constant anxiety, paranoia about their rivals, and that quiet, crushing realization that all the luxuries they've bought feel completely and utterly hollow. And this is the real, terrifying consequence of Mammon winning. The soul isn't tortured with fire and brimstone. No, it's just rendered inert. It's emptied of all life, all passion, and locked away forever in a dark, silent vault, surrounded by its own meaningless treasures. In the end, it's the question this whole story forces us to ask ourselves. When a soul is for sale, what's the real currency? Is it just gold? Or is it our ambition, our desire for security? Maybe it's the sum of all our quiet little compromises. It really leaves you wondering about the true price of your own desires and what you might be willing to trade to get them.